You're listening to Westben's podcast, Music for a While. My name is Sam, and in a fun turn of events, I will actually be the host of this week's episode. I'm very excited, and you should be too. This week, we are interviewing my friend, Ben Finley. Ben is the artistic director of the Performer-Composer Residency at Westben. And this year, you have so much to look forward to. We have the Residency showcases coming up on July 6th, but the Residency has actually been going on online since May 26th. Right now, as I speak to you, wherever you may be, there are performer-composers, over 60 performer-composers, collaborating globally to create incredible pieces of music and experiences for you that will become available on the week of July 6th. 2 performances each day, July 6th through the 11th. There will be incredible music available at www.westben.ca/PCR. Now, this episode, we talk with Ben about Westben's beginning, how he experienced that as a kid, how that evolved, his own music style, and then we focus on the Performer-Composer Residency, what it was like in its infancy, the first couple years, and what they did in March when they realized that international performer-composers could not fly and be with them in Campbellford physically. So buckle up, enjoy this episode, and thank you so much for listening. This episode is sponsored by our good friends Metaphor Home. Metaphor Home is an incredible store just downtown Warkworth. They have furnishings and home accessories, and all of their goods have sort of a tongue-in-cheek humor to them. Feel free to go check out their store downtown Warkworth. Now, here's our episode. Hello and welcome to Westben's podcast, Music for a While. This week we are giving Brian and Barb a bit of a break. You may recognize my voice from the start and end of previous episodes of our podcast, but this week we have a very exciting guest, so I'm so grateful to be moving into the hot seat today. I've been involved at Westben in a few different ways since around 2011. I helped backstage with a wonderful production of Fiddler on the Roof, involving what seemed like hundreds of community members. I had the opportunity to be on stage as Rhonda in Brian Finley's opera The Pencil Salesman, and I'm thrilled to have been working at Westben in digital marketing since the fall of this year. So I'm sure Brian and Barb have their feet up and are enjoying a socially distant glass of wine. And I would like to introduce our very special guest for today. We have with us the creative director of the International Performer-Composer Residency, Ben Finley. Ben is an incredible bassist and composer. He studied at U of T, CalArts, and is now working on postgraduate studies at the University of Guelph. Ben is the creative director of our Performer-Composer Residency here at Westben, which will be going into showcases on July 6th to the 11th. So as performers are submitting their pieces, we thought it would be a wonderful time to have Ben on the show. And of course, Ben is the son of our co-founders, Brian Finley and Donna Bennett. So thank you so much for speaking with me today, Ben.
I'm super glad to be here. Thanks.
Thank you for agreeing to be my very first podcast guest.
It's exciting.
I wanted to begin with a bit of your musical history, which I guess is really your story, having music so interwoven throughout your life from such an early age. I hope that's okay.
Sure.
As many of our listeners will know, your parents are the co-founders of the Westben Centre for Connection and Creativity Through Music. Mom, incredible soprano Donna Bennett, and dad, pianist-composer Brian Finley. Is it fair to say that your childhood farm in Campbellford became the Centre for Music that we all know and love?
I will say that I have personally been extremely inspired by Westben and that place, and also, and mom and dad too, and the way that they brought music into me and my sister Eve's lives. And I think we've, just cherished that as a gift.
Yeah, I remember seeing a photo of you and your sister Eve at 10 or so, playing violin on the concrete floor of the barn. I think you were in hard hats as the timber framing was almost constructed around you.
Yeah.
Do you have early memories of growing up around music and around your parents' sort of entrepreneurial love of community making?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's when I was really young, I remember flashes of concerts and going to a lot of concerts that my parents were playing and performing in. And I remember the music a lot, actually. I remember sitting in the audience and seeing them perform and just seeing their connection, and also just I think just experiencing music in such a personal way from such an early age. It was really influential for how I see music and how I like to participate in music. And when Westben was born with the community, I remember even I took the day off school, and the barn actually was raised really quickly in just about a week or so after, so much planning and organizing.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, it really was a cornfield that became something. So I remember sitting on that pile of dirt with Eve. I remember the hard hats. I remember it sort of just growing instantly, it felt like. And yeah, here we are 20 years later.
Wow. Yeah, there's such a special sense of togetherness at Westben.
Mm-hmm.
There's hundreds of volunteers and artists taking refuge in your farm home at the top of the hill. The audience sitting in cross breezes created by wind through those open barn doors. Yeah. Do you think this feeling of community affects the way that you make music today?
Oh, absolutely. Completely. It's been really, really influential. I think there's lots of elements about it. One is that sliding door element that you brought up. And one of the really amazing things that I think about the musical experience at Westben is the ability to hear other animals and geophonous sounds going on around Westben, and the wind and things.
Did you say geophonous?
Geophonous, yeah.
Ah.
Yeah. It's my new word of the day. But it's a really exciting soundscape that you're enveloped in as soon as you go to Westben. And it's kind of the opposite of closed door music making, or behind sort of pristinely soundproofed panels, or it's kind of it's not trying to shut the world out, I guess. And from that, there's a lot of community energy, everything from the volunteers to all kinds of community partners. And but yeah, hearing those other birds, frogs at night, and the wind, and I think how that mixed with the music has always been really vital to how I conceive of music. And I remember one little example I remember that I like to tell is in the Queen of the Nights aria that Westben put on a bunch of years ago, there was a thunderstorm. I'm not sure if you were around for that performance, Sam, but
I'm not sure, no.
There, at the very highest note of the Queen of the Nights aria, a strike of lightning came, and like just this huge bang. You couldn't have timed it any better. And it's really interesting when I feel like the environment itself sort of becomes a part of this performance, and all these synchronous and asynchronous elements sort of create this really interesting musical experience. So I've been trying to explore that, and I think keep that community energy and also wider connection, if possible, in my own music making.
Yeah, we'll talk more about your music making, but just thinking about your communities. So you graduated from high school in Campbellford, is that right?
Yes.
Campbellford High?
Yeah. High school was really fascinating for me because that's when I fell in love with the bass at the age of 14, and it just kind of stilled my being. And it's to this day, I just feel like I just love the give and take of it, and what it kind of opens up. And so I started playing in the high school jazz band and had really great inspirational teachers who all deserve mentioning, but really great energy brought to those ensembles, and a dedication and a commitment, and also a commitment to fun and having a good time and supporting each other. And so Dave Noble at the high school, and Nancy Elmhurst, and Deborah Henderson and so many people, and Ken Tizard, and
I know them.
yeah. All just incredible. Just a great kind of ecology of musical learning and different perspectives. And I just really soaked it all up, and really influential and really powerful for me. So I feel very lucky for that. And then I started taking classical double bass lessons, and I fell in love with that instrument too. And with the bow and the resonance of it. And
Yeah, I play the cello myself,
cool,
and there's some sort of a tie to string instruments almost mirror that sound of the human voice. I've heard that a bunch, and I think it's true. I think it has such a range of sound quality, and the bass just has such a rich sense of sound. And then you can also electrify it. You can you can plug it in, so you can change that sound completely, but still have the same sort of skill over an instrument. So I don't know. Good pick, Ben. I think that's incredible.
Yeah, it's been an incredible instrument. And so I took lessons with Ed Tate, who's a grandfather, another kind of grandfather figure to me. And then that led me to U of T for classical bass, and I really enjoyed playing in the orchestra and being surrounded by music.
That is such an incredible feeling, just to be surrounded by people that are so passionate about the same thing that you are. In conversation with you, and after reading your fancy bio, I noticed that you switched from classical into jazz. Now, what was the catalyst for you to switch departments like that while at U of T? I also wondered if you could take us on a journey from after U of T and working your way towards a professional career as a bassist.
Yeah, that's, I think in high school and even after Westben was just born, there was a lot of different musical directions, I think, in my life. And I feel extremely lucky to have seen so much music so early on in a barn outside of our house. But I always felt like I wanted to compose more and just try things out and improvise more. And so I leaned into that and switched to the jazz program, and really great group of people there, and took off in a more improvisation kind of personal composition approach. And then from there, I kind of also somehow fell into studying philosophy and cognitive science on the side, and mostly kind of in a writing notes to myself in the margins of taking notes for those classes about how interesting I thought the parallels to those and making music and improvising were. And then so from there, I kind of, I guess, really took on improvisation as a mode of creating, in addition to being a composer and bassist and also just other art forms. And that kind of led to CalArts and also going to Banff and learning so many incredible life experiences there from the faculty and students, and the beautiful surroundings, and this kind of vulnerability of sharing life experience, and also sharing this idea that you don't have to be at the end of the road to think of yourself as worthy. I think everyone was kind of really just sharing where they were in the process, and I think the more that we opened up with that at Banff in particular, the more interesting the music became. And so from that, I met Wadada Leo Smith, who's a brilliant trumpet composer and just a wonderful human being who inspired so many people there and elsewhere. And he led an ensemble that I was a part of, and we played 4 bars of music over the course of a week, and 1 bar per day. And at the end of that week, when we finally played the whole 4 bars, he looked to each of us and gave us extremely direct, personal acknowledgments. Very simple, kind of like, that was beautiful drumming. And
do you remember yours?
I think it was just that was beautiful. I don't know. I think he probably said this was beautiful bass playing. Like
Yeah.
I think he gave everyone the compliment of their sort of instrument focus, but in such a, because he was tough on us throughout the week too. In such a grateful and just really like felt like he was looking right at you and seeing you without any barrier. And then after having gone through that experience for the week, we all just like broke down each compliment he gave us. So it was this really generous as well as kind of hardworking version of music and like deep personal acknowledgement that has been really inspirational, and I definitely cherish that moment a lot. Yeah, so that's, and he was working at CalArts at the time. He retired before I got there, unfortunately. But yeah, I think CalArts was really interesting to me because they had a performer composer program, this sort of hybrid program that didn't look for a specific instrument or a specific musical practice, but more was looking for more of just like a human expression, not trying to put people into a specific category of musician. And that was really amazing. That's something I sort of struggled with at U of T, and that's kind of why I bounced around a little bit, I think, because I wanted to write and compose and play the bass and improvise. And it was more of a categorization at the time, I think, to try to play from. And I think that's changed a bit now, but the program at CalArts has really drew me because of that.
Yeah, very cool. So just thinking about switching majors, I actually started in science psychology when I first went to Queen's.
Oh, cool.
So I commend us both, because I ended up in drama and marketing, which I think is where I should have ended up. So at 17 and 18, for us to switch paths, kudos to us for having that courage.
Yeah. I think it's important though, right? Like it's important to listen to yourself and what's working and yeah. How was that for you, that switch?
It was good. It was good. I've always been someone that I have such a broad range of interests. So I like to keep my major kind of open. So to choose drama, it allowed me to do lots of interdisciplinary fun stuff, which I really enjoyed. So yeah, it was the right move for sure. I know I personally want to hear a bit more about your professional projects after university. And the first thing that comes to my mind is the project you were working on just before we all entered this crazy pandemic, which was that outdoor opera in the States. Can you tell me just a little bit more about that cool project?
Yes, it was very cool. I'm very grateful to be a part of it. I played bass in it, and it's called Sweetland, and it's created by Sweetland. Yes, created by the Industry, which is a experimental opera company based in Los Angeles, and it was so interesting from a number of perspectives. Its content is about the mythologies around Thanksgiving, the holiday of Thanksgiving, and specifically the sort of enduring legacies of violent settler colonialism and sort of harm on the lasting harm on that, and the stories, and also the multiple perspectives of that harm and sort of how we can, what kind of possible futures are available to us today. And so that multi-perspectival thing was really a core feature of it. So the audience actually had two different versions of the piece that they could see.
Oh, wow.
And so if you you wouldn't really get a concept of the whole piece. And it was even encouraged actually to not see both pieces. So you'd kind of leave with this nagging, not being able to see the whole picture experience. So that was really cool. And I didn't see the whole, even though it was quite a long project, I didn't quite see the whole thing too. So
you followed the rules.
Yeah, but it it was disrupted by COVID, so we did videotape it too, so that kind of became another experience. But one of the most interesting things about it for me was the collaborative sort of structure of the piece. So because you had these two scenes going on at once, and because there's these multiple perspectives going on, there were two directors, two librettists, two writers, and then this huge and diverse, interesting cast and crew. So you had these really interesting partnerships. It wasn't one director's vision. It wasn't one writer, one musician. It kind of had this, and the collaboration was really baked in, and there's these long conversations and really interesting program notes that sort of came out of it that I would recommend checking out to anyone who's interested.
Yeah.
But yeah, really, really very interesting model of opera in these days.
It sounds like such a perfect piece for the zeitgeist that we're in right now too. And showing that a way to move forward is to have these partnerships and these open collaborative conversations. I think that's really awesome.
Yeah, me too. It felt like a very special place to be in, and a very unique kind of room, I guess. Yeah, what it can take to listen to each other and to make this art together and to share that with people. I don't know. There's just a lot of bubbling things that did make it feel very a unique zone for sure.
That's cool. Thinking about collaborating, which seems to be a theme through your entire life, which is amazing. You have a collaborator that you have been working with for a long time in Kat, and you have your duo Ben and Kat. When I'm reading about sort of your bio and your history, I noticed that you recorded at Capitol Records. What was that like?
It was very cool. It's a beautiful, beautiful space, beautiful room. Yeah, at CalArts they have a project where there's an opportunity to record at Capitol Records, and so Kat and I recorded a short piece there, and we met at CalArts, and it's been a really interesting journey. We created an album that kind of came out of that whole time, and it's been a really interesting kind of this voice and bass duo is something that I think is pretty cool, because there's such a stretch of kind of range, and we use a lot of electronics and kind of a little bit of storytelling and a little bit of kind of reminiscence of classical art song stuff, but then also very much kind of a folk music focus, and poetry and a lot of shape-shifting kind of stuff. So it's been a really really cool experience of voice and bass intersecting in that way.
That's neat. If people wanted to listen to your records, where can they find that music?
They can go to Bandcamp and type in Kat and Ben, or they can go to either my site or Kat's site, and you can find it there as well, which is benfinleymusic.com, and Kat's, I think, is katherineschumann.com, but that might need to be fact checked.
I will fact check that for you, Ben. No problem. Now, before we start talking about the performer-composer residency, I thought this would be a perfect time to listen to a piece of yours, Ben. So here is Co-Presence that was recorded by Ben at the Westben Barn just in early April, as spring was getting ready to collaborate. Enjoy. I'm back with Ben Finley, the creative director of the Westben Performer-Composer Residency. Where we left off, you were studying in California at CalArts, all about improvisation and what it means to be a performer-composer. I just went to look at the International Society for Improvised Music, and I read this thing trying to wrap my head around what improvisation might mean to you before I sort of hear what it actually means to you. Is it Ed Sarath? Is that the founder's name? Do you know?
He's a member of the IC community. Mm-hmm. So
Okay.
IC is kind of this network of a bunch of different improvisers.
Yeah, so he sort of says, we've entered an extraordinarily exciting time in the history of music when musicians have access to an unprecedented expanse of influences and creative strategies. While improvisation is one form or another is increasingly central to this global synthesis, a significant gap looms between the improvisation-based aesthetic paradigm that guides musical practice and the aesthetic awareness that prevails in the music industry, academic musical world, and society at large. I found that to be sort of a nice, succinct way to help me as a layman person understand the power of improvisation and where maybe the residencies are sort of filling a void between those two different ideas. I wondered if you wanted to talk just a little bit about your relationship to improvising and some of your favorite maybe musical experiences with that.
Yeah, totally. The residency is definitely, there's a lot of an improvisatory kind of ethos, I think, underneath it. I guess what I mean by that is it has a lot of, there's a lot of listening to each other and sort of negotiating what everybody is bringing. So, you have all these people from different countries coming to this place at Westben and all with different musical experiences, cultural backgrounds, and we're making music together throughout the week and in a final performance as well as these public workshops. So how that all kind of comes together is, I feel like, a very much an improvisation in itself, because it takes us time to sort of figure out who everyone is as people and to get to know each other and to sort of complement each other's voices. So people don't come in necessarily with fully formed works. It's kind of, we get to know each other a little bit before the residency typically, and then we sort of negotiate those things while we're together. So that I feel like that is kind of improvisation as this social practice. And then also there's improvisation in this sort of artistic practice where we might be improvising in a more explicitly musical sense, artistic sense. And I also like the idea that isn't mandated too by this residency, that if not everyone has to be an improviser per se to be a part of the residency. I think there's all different kinds of flow of composition, improvisation, pre-planned material, spontaneous material, and we play with that in the moment with each other. But there is a improvisational sort of guideposts, I guess, that we use, I think, to work together.
So thinking back to when the residency began, I'm really curious to hear about sort of the start of this residency back in, was it 2018?
Yes.
Yeah. So did you have an aha moment where you knew you wanted to create a residency program of your own at Westben?
That's interesting. I wouldn't say an immediate moment, but there was sort of an opportunity to get more involved in Westben, and that was kind of posed in this, like, how would you imagine becoming involved in this? And coming right out of CalArts for the performer-composer thing, I did see a big lack of musical institutions that just embrace those two things together, even though it's a very common practice to do. So it kind of came from that, and okay, what do we have here at Westben? What could we offer people? What would be interesting and needed, and so it kind of came from that call.
And it's interesting. I mean, your dad, Brian Finley, he's a performer composer. And of course, you're a
Yeah.
performer composer. And it does seem to be woven into the history of Westben. I know Brian has written multiple musicals and an opera, and he has this expanse of writing, which is fantastic. So Westben was probably ready for a program like this.
Yeah. It's really interesting you say that because that makes me, I do think there's a pretty deep connection there in terms of West Bend as a place and kind of an approach to experiencing music, as well as this performer composer kind of hybrid role. And I think there is something like what we were talking about earlier about that sound experience at West Bend, where the doors slide open and you hear these other species, other animals, other sounds, and there's something about the place and the people that I think is kind of wrapped up in that performer composer identity, and I think that could be called other things. I think it's there's something about the venue itself that kind of, I don't know. I guess I do think of the barn sometimes as its own musician that is responding. Yeah.
Totally. And even rural Ontario as a place for musicians to go and sort of be reinvigorated and create music. I think that's cool. And it is very connected with the place.
Yeah.
So our website describes the performer composer residency. It says the Westben PCR is a meeting space. It's a chance to exchange and fully support diverse musical practices in community. It's also a place that doesn't set specific genres of music, musical identity restrictions, which are all things that you have discussed before. But there are a number of really unique elements to this program that you have led the creation of. Each artist is given the opportunity to share their musical practice with the group through workshops. The workshops are traditionally open to the public, which sparks that intergenerational communication that you've talked about. The residency is free to participants, due in part to sponsorship from people like Metaphor Home and Finley and Associates and others. Yes. So what do you feel makes this residency truly unique to others that you've seen, or even to Banff that you experienced?
Yeah, I think a lot of the things you mentioned, I think the kind of cost accessibility thing is really important to me as well. There aren't a whole lot of residencies that are able to offer no cost to apply and no cost to attend. And it's kind of along this exchange model where we are, the participants are both kind of faculty and students. We're exchanging, it's more of an exchange of knowledges.
Right.
Because everyone has such an interesting contributions on so many levels and how they think about music, and to be able to share that, I think also makes for really interesting music itself. So I think that's cool. And and also I think it's good to give participants an opportunity to direct things in a way that they feel like they would like to. I think that gives everyone a little bit of confidence to kind of show themselves, like, this is how I'm thinking of things, and they can sort of direct that space in whatever way they want. So the workshops in the past have taken on such drastically different approaches of public interaction, of simply conversations with people, to sort of presentations, to kind of personal musical histories, to kind of more motion based or sound interactive, or kind of instrument building or improvisation. So lots of different, no one way of doing that. So I'm really that's a very unique part.
Yeah, each residency, as you said, it's welcomed very unique performers, like you said, and structured in a way, you're right, that their input sort of shapes the feeling and the outcome of the program. Could you give each year of the residency an adjective? Like 2018 and 2019?
Oh, wow. Okay, you have to give me a few seconds to think about this.
That's okay. Or even thinking about how each year was different from the previous year.
Right. Yeah, maybe that'll help come up with that word. But that's a really fascinating question.
Yeah.
Took me in a deep thought. The first year was this initiation kind of thing where we didn't know what we were doing and just
Right.
put it out there, tried to support, tried to organize as much as we could to give people a great experience, and kind of also asked the first cohort to just they are a part of this initiation, so there's a very special ability to kind of shape where that goes from that first experience. I think it is really special in that way. So whatever that adjective is, something about that kickoff.
Yeah, they're like the trailblazers. They're the
Yeah.
foundation.
Yeah. So people, I think, and there's a special kind of trust and kind of camaraderie, I think, from that being the first one. The second one was really interesting because we didn't know what to expect, because we didn't know what the models would be or how the previous models would be broken or not.
Right.
And it was really fascinating because it was very different. It was a very different experience in terms of the people, I think the practices, the concerts, the workshops, everything was slightly different. And it's, how the cohort moves as a unit and communicates with each other. And so I think that's one of the things that can't be fully predicted. And so I think what really stood out to me on that second year was the final concert, and we put a lot of work into it, and it was a really, I think, I don't know, I think we really went somewhere. I think I don't know, the energy around that concert was very special to me. So
I was there. It was an incredible
Yeah.
concert. Yeah, you have two amazing co-facilitators that are working with you this year, Davy Sumner and Sarah Bell Reed. Is that right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Have they worked on the past two iterations of the residency? Have there been others involved? And how did you meet these two?
Yeah, so they're both good friends. They have been involved from the beginning. I met them both at CalArts. Davey was a huge part of mixing the Cat and Ben record.
Oh, cool.
And Sarah, I actually met at CalArts, but it turns out she had a summer cottage 15 minutes away from Westben. So we met
Wow.
in California, but turns out she was living all the summers 15 minutes away and didn't bump into each other. So that's
pretty serendipitous.
It is. And so Sarah and I can really talk about the space, the Westben and Campbellford and Trent Hills area, with a kind of familiarity and a kind of nostalgia too, I think. And I think, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's cool. The residency, as we've been saying, used to take place in Campbellford, at the barn, the clock tower, in lodging with windswept along the river. What responses did you have from musicians about their time in rural Ontario?
I think they really enjoyed it. It's a beautiful time in the summer, all year round, but in the summer, I think on the water and being able to go for late night canoe trips and just be in this sort of beautiful, welcoming space. I think they really enjoyed. I think it's one of the other things we really try to do is to include elements of care for everybody. So we provide really incredible, I will say, meals for everybody. So we have home cooked meals at the farmhouse, which are usually made by Davy's wife, Clark Sumner. So Davy and Clark both come up, and that's a really wonderful time. And
So
Clark
jealous.
makes the most. Yeah, it's she goes way overboard in the best kind of way. It's just so delicious. But to ground each other with meals throughout all our working together is a really nice sort of time to get together for that too. And I think that brings the whole because food and community, I feel like they're just big parts of living in general, and especially these sort of rural communities. So trying to get that experience, I think, and weave it into the music is important to me.
I think it comes back to that idea of vulnerability too. Having a meal with someone, it's a very vulnerable thing. So to sort of feel comfortable to eat with one another, it does create a really cool community.
It does, yeah. It is, and I think it takes time for people to, settle into a new place and to take down their guard or feel like they can, and just kind of put aside some of our artistic identities or other identities to get to yes, share those vulnerable spaces. And that takes a lot of collaborative work too, to be heard and to support each other.
So as we know now, unfortunately, the place element of the residency is not able to be exactly the same as it has been. We've been talking a lot about the barn and the food and the community building, but I am so impressed and inspired by how yourself and Davey and Sarah have been able to take the 2020 residency and still include a lot of those elements of comfort and community in a new digital space. So before we talk about what 2020 will look like and all of the crazy groundbreaking stuff connected with it, let's have a quick listen to a creation from a residency gone by. This brings us to the 2020 Digital Performer Composer Residency. So this year, we've all been faced with so many challenges. And before we get to how you adapt, like I said, I just want to start by commending you, Davey, and Sarah for adapting in the first place, for seeing the challenges created by COVID-19 as an opportunity for further innovation. I just think that's really commendable. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Of course, back in March, you would have realized that the residency with international musicians flying in from around the world, staying in Campbellford, those elements would not be happening as planned. I wondered if you could talk us through when you realized that this would not be happening as planned and how you came up with the idea to actually include 4 times the applicants in a reimagination of this residency.
Yeah. So we usually can accept 11 participants, and that's to give them a really great experience in terms of the accommodation and cost-free and the meals and all these things. And with COVID and everything, we soon realized that the international travel and things like that would be off the table. So we sort of thought it would be really interesting if we flipped the script, because in past years, we've had to only accept a handful out of way more than we'd actually like to accept. It's a very difficult adjudication process. And so this year provided an interesting opportunity for those who could connect with the internet. So we decided that anybody who applied could join. We sort of flipped the adjudication script and said, okay, what if we propose this new model? Let's just see who might be interested and who might be available. So we decided to turn it around and invite anybody who applied. And out of 90 or so applicants, we had 62 say yes, which I think is great.
That's so cool. When I sort of first entered this whole process we had a town hall meeting with everyone on May 26th with all of those 60 plus applicants. And I have to say, it was a really exhilarating experience. Just to see everyone in the same quote unquote space together was really, really neat.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think, this has been a tough time for COVID in terms of, lots of things. The loss of life, is a huge, severe tragedy, and also the, disruption in people's lives and how people have coped. And so I think musicians have been hard hit too from that. And so I think there is this
almost a yearning.
Yeah, definitely a yearning, and this tragedy to sort of sort through and how do we create music in a time like this? And how do we do it in a way that doesn't feel like we're just trying to do business as usual and we're just trying to replicate some previous experience? I think we've been working really hard to try to listen to each other as in these new groups, and to make something that feels like it's not avoiding the realities of the world, I guess.
At the beginning of the residency, you asked participants to use the pandemic as a catalyst for creation. Following the murder of George Floyd, you invited participants to also respond to social injustices with their music. I've been moved by the message board that's up on Discord that you set up to share resources. It's just been such an incredible resource in itself to tap into. As final pieces start to come in from ensembles, how do you feel the participants have taken that prompt, the prompt of what's going on in the world right now, and expressed that current moment through their work? Or has it ultimately been expressed more in those private community spaces like Discord?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. The participants are from over 10 countries, and there's all these different kinds of experiences and also similarities that people are going through. And COVID-19 and the issues of music kind of dropping out of our lives in the ways we were used to, and and the isolation and the challenges around that, we're sort of where we started with these ideas, and we kind of asked people to listen to each other, to take account of their local context, and to kind of create a new ground. And that would sort of, Westben would offer this welcoming, supportive ground space for that. And then following the murder of George Floyd, I think that really it added to this deeper project that goes beyond music, of creating supportive infrastructures for all of us, and to just try to imagine and organize and create really committed anti-racist and decolonized musical spaces, and otherwise, of course. So, the residency, we've set it up because in a way that we want to still feel that feeling of community, as if we were in the same room together. So we have chat spaces, and we have group meetings often, and we have kind of social hangout chat spaces, and anti-racist resource sharing things. And so the facilitators are sort of helping each group with their project, but we're in a more hands-off way. So we're there to sort of help things come to fruition, but ultimately it's the conversations between group members in their own ensembles, and how they can communicate with the like you mentioned, we have a Discord server, so people can communicate in a very easy chat form. We've had a lot of really interesting conversations in a lot of different ways, and it's in this kind of non-lateral setup. So there's lots of crosstalks that people can engage with, and in these intimate group settings, as well as with this whole group. And it's definitely influenced where we've gone, and it's really amplified my desire to continue to explore things like the residency. The residency is not a perfect example of this, but of creating these kinds of structures that are more equitable and intentionally anti-racist, and so at the end of the day, also caring, and and I think that's really important, that we've really tried to work to create a musical atmosphere where people feel cared for, and to try to, by not enforcing, but just kind of trying to guide this idea of care for each other in this project, where each ensemble is making one project together, which isn't something that everybody has done in this residency. So there's sometimes this new collaborative energy, and when people are contributing to something, we've tried to really encourage people to be supportive of one another, and to just give thanks for people's contributions, and I think that care extends in a very small way maybe, but extends to these social justice issues that are really important and affect us all. So yes.
Yeah. How have each of these, are there 13 groups?
There are, yeah.
Yeah, so how have they been collaborating? Do individuals record music and send it to one another? Are each group sort of collaborating in a different way? What does that look like right now?
Yeah, that's one of the most interesting things for me about this whole process, because we weren't sure how that would look. And it's turned out that each group has really created a new kind of collaborative model. Everything from, I guess some examples are, one that pops to mind is the Exquisite Corpse. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that model of.
No, I'm not. I wish I was though.
It's that kind of game where you draw a beginning of a drawing, and then you sort of only show the next person the little ends of the drawing, and so the next person doesn't know what you've created, but they have a thing to continue. Yeah. So there's kind of an intentional withholding of contributions, and people, and sort of what emerges, is this new experience, this new drawing that you hadn't anticipated. That's one approach. And people have also done kind of circle of lives where some person starts the idea, then it gets overdubbed and created on. Some people have kind of taken the approach of, I have these video editing skill sets and I have these music editing, music audio skill sets, and sort of divvying up tasks. And some people are kind of feel like born facilitators or like taking on the idea of creating the kind of group protocols or the group workflows. And they've all come up with a completely new model, which is really exciting to me and gives me a lot of hope, I think, beyond the residency.
Yeah, that sounds so exciting. I know I've been able to pick through a few little pieces on Discord, and I'm very excited to see what this all looks like for the showcase, which of course is July 6th to 11th.
Yes.
It's a week of premieres of these different pieces. And traditionally, the residency would close as a concert at the barn. So you had this space that grounds everything. This year, of course, it's necessary that these premieres happen in a new way online. So not only will the showcases happen over the course of a week instead of a single evening at the barn, the week will take place in a digital venue. So there's 13 chamber ensembles all having a piece to present. Mm-hmm. Can you sort of explain to our audience what you're hoping this week of premieres will look like in this digital space?
Yes, totally. I will also withhold a little information because I want people to be surprised when they get there. But the space is kind of unlike other traditional music live experiences. Mm-hmm. It will be a kind of experience that doesn't necessarily try to replicate the in-live experience, but hopefully feels like it's a digital space that feels inclusive, welcoming, and rejuvenating. And it's going to be laid out in a way that, well, actually, maybe I won't say anything about that. but I think it'll be, I highly suggest tuning in. There will be 2 premieres per day.
Yep.
And we will have 3 on the final day, and then the works will live after that week. But there'll also be some food exploration. So there'll be some local chefs in the Trent Hills area, Campbellford area.
Mm-hmm. I can speak to that.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm the Dare to Share portion of the week is something I'm looking forward to. I know Donna has put in a great deal of work to curate 6 or maybe more at this point videos from local chefs and environmental partners that we know and love. Here's just a quick little snapshot of who will be sort of featured. So we have Angela Roast from Central and Main Chocolate. We've got Tina Bastis from Humble Herb. We've got The Spear Restaurant, Melly Rolls, Green Moxie, and Kim Davidson from Sam's Kitchen. And they're all creating these really neat little interactive videos that'll act as interludes, should you choose, while you're experiencing these other performances. The name Dare to Share, of course, is a mirror of Dare to Pair, which is a program that usually takes place at the barn each summer with the Concert at the Barn series. And chefs will come and they create a full, amazing meal that pairs in some way with the music of the evening. And so this partnership between food and culture and music has been such a cornerstone of Westben. But through our conversation, it's also been a cornerstone of your story. You talk about having meals in the farmhouse with a wide variety of artists and how that impacted your taste. And then we've talked about your meals at Banff and getting to just have normal conversations with peers that also loved music. And then you brought up the incredible food Clark would create at the farmhouse for the performer-composers. So I'm just so happy that we can include food in some way to the performer-composer experience in this digital venue, because it seems to be this critical turning point for a kind culture and to make people feel really at home.
Yeah, that's going to be a lot of fun. Well, from the music perspective too, it's been interesting because we've been working together for about a month, collaborating with each other in ensembles. So there's been a decent amount of time to get to know each other, get to hear what's going on in each other's lives, and share each other's musical gifts, practices. So that that ability and space to collaborate together feels quite similar actually to the space at the barn, even though it's in this distance way. And one way we've tried to do that is by loosely asking people to ground themselves in their own local contexts and to kind of share that with others. And so there's these cross relationships from these massive different geographical points. And I have one ensemble that has I think it's 5 different time zones.
Oh my goodness.
And so it's a meeting challenge, but the music that's being made from that is really interesting. And I think people are hungry for this kind of real sense of connection and musical ability. So I hope that people, when they tune in and get to experience and explore this music, will also feel a sense of that connection where it doesn't always come across, I think, in the copied and pasted version, I think, of live music. I think there has to be something more that that creates that connection, as we're so saturated with new digital lives these days. I think so much screen time, and so we're trying to create a place that doesn't replicate the barn, but kind of, like you said, touches on those elements of food, of this environmental connection, and this welcoming meeting space where people have time and intention to be together and to share each other's diverse life backgrounds.
Mm-hmm. And it connects people to their space or their place, wherever that may be.
Yeah.
That piece of connectivity with, like you said, the open doors of the barn and hearing all the creatures and critters outside to collaborate with. If these performer composers are recreating that in their own homes, it still grounds it in a place, which I think is a big element of the residency. So I am so excited for July 6th to 11th to get to interact with all of this music that has been created over the past month. Thank you so much for talking with me, Ben. Do you have anything else you'd like to add that maybe I've missed about the performer-composer residency?
No, just thank you for talking with me as well and diving into this. And it's very exciting, and I hope who's ever listening now will tune in and experience it and take your time through experiencing these different works that have unfolded during this particular historical moment. So thank you for letting me come on here, and thanks for a really interesting conversation.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you so much. I would be remiss to not mention our Galaxy sponsor, Finley and Associates. Now, Finley and Associates are our largest sponsor this year, and we are so grateful for their continued support and their help to keep Westben as vibrant as we have been able to be through this whole pandemic. So thank you so much. There are also a nice group of Blue Sky sponsors who are supports for the Performer-Composer Residency this year. To learn all about these partners, be sure to head on over to www.westben.ca and you'll get to read all about our wonderful partners there. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Samantha Clark. This has been an absolute pleasure, and we look forward to hearing all of your feedback. Take care.